In Montgomery, Alabama, there's a monument to remember those who led the civil rights movement. Names and dates on a stone, which represent real people in bold action who carried out real dreams. Selma, Birmingham, Montgomery, freedom riders, marchers. To many, they are only black and white images now. But then, it was a struggle which would change America. The voice of a great leader inspired thousands.
I say to you this afternoon that I'll rather down the highways of Alabama than make a butchery of my conscience.
They were moved by his dream and hurt when it seemed to fade. The events of a movement and the words of Dr. King would shape many lives. But who among them would march on to fulfill the dream?
Major funding for the new explorers is provided by Amoco, celebrating the adventure of scientific discovery for the year 2000 and beyond. Additional funding is made possible by Waste Management Incorporated, providing recycling and other waste services around the world. And by Duracell, embracing the power of science education, the source of future technology and innovative growth. Duracell, the copper-top battery.
Hello, I'm Bill Kurtis, and these may look familiar. They're used by paramedics and in operating rooms to shock a heart back to life if it stops. But it's a little difficult to carry this machine around with you all the time in case of an emergency. Our new Explorer works with a much more advanced idea. They've taken the power of this machine and placed it in this small electronic device that can be implanted in the body to sense when a heart stops and start it again. It's enabled our new explorer, Dr. Levi Watkins of Johns Hopkins Hospital, to chart a whole new course in cardiac surgery. Baltimore, Maryland, the corridors of Johns Hopkins Hospital. It's a world-class institution, considered one of the best.
I got through all the radiology.
70-year-old Bill Rosberg wouldn't argue. After separate surgeries for heart failure and cancer, he's a Hopkins regular.
My wife can take you around this hospital better than any guide you have. But we love this place, seriously, no matter what it is. I don't know what they do here, but they make you feel very comfortable.
He's here today because 2 weeks ago, his heart stopped.
Well, see if you can run Mrs. Rosberg down.
Dr. Levi Watkins, a heart surgeon at Johns Hopkins, is going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. His specialty is giving patients another chance at life. Bill Rosberg almost missed that chance, as his wife explains.
My son had come up from Charlottesville, and it's Father's Day weekend, and we were we were greeting each other out on the driveway, and my husband was in the basement in his shop playing solitaire, and he heard us from the driveway, so he came upstairs. So it wasn't much time, because he came up, he decided to get a glass of water on the sink board, and we came through greeted each other and the two grandchildren, then came through the family room, and I could see his arm lying on the floor. So and at that point there was glass everywhere, but he was not cut. He did not strike his head. He really was very lucky.
The human heart, under normal circumstances, beats steadily, about 72 beats per minute. But for many heart patients, the scarring of previous heart attacks could lead to sudden cardiac arrhythmia. It's a short circuit within the heart that throws it off course into a pulsating frenzy. The heart rate soars, blood pressure falls, the body's pump shuts down. By applying a jolt of electricity to the heart, doctors can shock it back to its proper rhythm. Without intervention, most people die within minutes. But those who get help can be pulled from sudden death. A team of emergency medical technicians conducts its rescue mission, delivering an electric current to the heart with the pedals of a defibrillator. For the fortunate, the heart returns to normal and the episode ends.
Gotta get you down there.
In a few hours, Dr. Watkins will implant a miniaturized defibrillator in Bill Rosberg. The risk of his heart stopping unexpectedly again is great. If it does, the defibrillator will jolt it back into action.
Now, where we are with this device,
Much smaller.
much smaller. You can see the differences, much smaller. This is both the doctor and the powerhouse. It can make the diagnosis of ventricular tachycardia, and it also has the power. Now, they're comparable. The power source sits here. These are the paddles, if you will. These patches compare to these. So this goes on the chest, this goes on the heart.
Dr. Watkins has a long history with the defibrillator. He's performed more than 500 implants in over 10 years, more than any other heart surgeon. In the 1970s, he worked closely with the inventor of the device, Dr. Michel Morawski of Baltimore Sinai Hospital. It took years of research, refinement, and experimentation before the first defibrillator implant in a human was performed in 1980. The lead surgeon, Dr. Levi Watkins. The procedure was marked by both triumph and tension.
Actually, the first implant fell on the floor. The nurses and all were so nervous for the first implant. When I asked for the device, it went to the floor. So the second device was given to me, and we implanted it in this lady. The most notable feature of the first implant was, as you saw, we have to stop the heart to see if the device will bring it back. And in all of our training, we are taught to start the heart, not to stop it.
Yes.
And so for the first time, I guess ever, and certainly for the first time in my experience, we stopped it. And we had to wait until the device fired. And in this particular patient, it took 35 seconds.
Oh, my goodness.
And it seemed like that was the longest 35 seconds in a lifetime.
Yes.
And we were about to abandon the concept of the internal defibrillator and go to that external device that you... In fact, I had grabbed the paddles of the external device, getting ready to try to shock her back, when the internal implantable device fired and brought her back.
Wow.
And that was the first human implant and the first human restoration, automatic restoration by the device.
Is she still living?
Yes, she is.
Really?
Yes, she is.
What a success story.
Yes, she is.
In this machine.
Another previous patient is living proof the implant is reliable.
It jolts you. And the first
From 1950 to
thing, once you
1962, Art Donovan was a star tackle for the Baltimore Colts.
and it went off, and boom, I saw this blue flash. I thought maybe I was just, this was just something I was imagining.
In 1968, he was inducted into the NFL's Hall of Fame and has been a Baltimore celebrity ever since. His own defibrillator has come through more than once.
And the third time it went off, I was sitting on the floor of my kitchen. And when my son came to help me, and boom, it went off, and it raised me right off the ground. And my son goes, "Jeez," and I was fine.
It's 11 a.m., and Bill Rosberg is in the cardiac catheter lab. Cardiologists carefully thread defibrillator wires into a vein. Their target is the patient's heart. 3 hours from now, Dr. Watkins will connect the other ends of the wires to the defibrillator, which will be permanently placed in the abdomen. For the rest of Mr. Rosberg's life, the implant will continually pick up electric impulses from the heart, monitoring it for abnormal rhythm. Without the implant, the likelihood of a patient living 5 years is 0. Now, with the implant and techniques pioneered by Dr. Watkins, life expectancy is 10 years.
The only thing we have to do is check this electrode out, make sure it's okay. Put in a...
Before surgery, Dr. Watkins gives a final briefing to his chief resident, who will assist him in the operating room.
Prep him out all the way down in case we have to resuscitate him with the external device.
He makes a strong effort at mentoring, perhaps because of the leader who guided him. In 1955, Martin Luther King Jr. had just moved to Montgomery, Alabama, taking the pulpit at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. He was only 25. Among his congregation were Levi Watkins Sr. and his family. Dr. Watkins would soon become president of Alabama State University. Levi Jr. and his brothers and sisters were destined to live in a special place and time, to witness a wildfire that would sweep the South and eventually America. The tinder for the blaze of protest was Montgomery, a city filled with racial tension and divided in two, one black, one white. For the whites, there was privilege, but for a black child in Montgomery,
Couldn't go to the swimming pool, the zoo, the park, the Dairy Queen, the White Tower restaurants, the Paramount movie theaters. None of those things were available. So back then at that time, it seemed not a great place to grow up. But in retrospect, it was a wonderful place to grow up.
and what a time and piece of history.
Yes, yes.
And as a youngster, he was surrounded by the struggle. To Levi, it was a lifelong call to action, to continue the work of his pastor, the man who led the movement.
We are not afraid of the threat of arrest. We are not afraid of police dogs. We are not afraid of the Nazi party, of the states' rights party, because as we march, we know that we do not march alone.
Dr. King was not only a great speaker, he was a great preacher. And I remember the many, many times that I was at his home. We had a little club called the Crusaders Club. Dr. King would bring in all the young boys and try to influence them, and obviously he did influence us. But he brought us in his home in the evenings and talked about the concept of God and what that should mean.
Dr. King's dream, born in Montgomery, has come true today as Dr. Watkins operates on Bill Rosberg. The surgical team will use a new approach known as the EndoTac lead system. It's a closed chest procedure, less invasive than the standard open heart approach, and as yet, still in development. The new technique is under protocol. It must be proven effective before it's certified by the federal government. With his own prior consent, Bill Rosberg has become a volunteer in the study.
Pick up, please.
Before connecting the generator and leads, the team will conduct a series of tests to make sure all components are working, to determine the amount of energy needed to restart the heart and to meet protocol requirements.
Okay, you got your pacing hooked up, big team.
First, the electrodes are tested.
We're going to have the external defibrillator on max. We have to cut this off so that we can shock him in case he doesn't come back.
This is the most dramatic step, especially for someone who has just survived cardiac arrhythmia. To find out how much energy it takes to defibrillate the heart, it must first be fibrillated, stopped, just as it was when Bill Rosberg collapsed at home. All eyes focus on the corner screen. The top yellow lines represent EKG, the heart's electrical output. The bottom peaks show blood pressure.
Okay, you guys ready? Have at it.
Okay, papers on. Music, 1001, 1002, 1003, off.
An electric current shuts the heart down.
7, 8, 9, 10, Frank.
The implant fires, but the heart doesn't respond.
Rescue, internal rescue at 40 coming. Try it again, charge again, start 40. 40's coming.
Put this thing on here.
Go ahead again.
Get these out of the way.
Nope, still 40 again is not getting him internally. Okay, externally got him.
The implant didn't work. The jolt from the paddles used 10 times the power of the implant.
That was 15, and then 2 internal at 40 didn't get him, so let's go to configuration 2.
The team must modify its approach, altering the lead system, closing in on the precise power setting.
Now, how do you want, what do you want as negative in this second configuration?
The trial run on Bill Rosberg's implant continues. There's no substitute test, no way to simulate arrhythmia. They'll have to stop his heart again.
Everybody cross their fingers and say their prayer.
Okay, induction, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Frank?
Ah,
Good.
beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful.
The implant worked. Bill Rosberg's heart is now beating normally. Putting the patient's life on hold, relying on teamwork to bring him back. It's a huge responsibility, and the outcome is never certain.
I don't know how to answer that.
A doctor needs a place to gain perspective, like the waters of Baltimore's harbor. What are the rewards for a surgeon?
I think the first reward is your ability to impact, along with God, in saving life. And I mean not life down the road, but helping to save life immediately. Because, you know, most of my patients know they are lucky. They are lucky to be here. They know that even before they come. So I enjoy operating on them. I enjoy loving them. And I try to share myself with them and treat them as if they are my family, which they are.
And the family tree has many branches. On the walls of his harborfront home are pictures of many civil rights leaders and renowned performers, all longtime friends of Levi. The late Reverend Dr. Ralph Abernathy, singer Harry Belafonte, former UN ambassador and Atlanta mayor Andrew Young, African National Congress leader Nelson Mandela, and Bishop Desmond Tutu. The friendships go deep, rooted in a common cause. And of course, Rosa Parks.
One single act of courage. She is a wonderful friend, and she is a patient. She's doing very well. She's one of the strongest women I have ever met in my life at any age.
On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks changed the course of history. That afternoon, she rode a Montgomery bus home from work. She sat down. The driver came back and asked her to give her seat to a white man. By the courage of her convictions, she refused to get up and was promptly jailed. Rosa Parks' action sparked the Montgomery bus boycott and the entire civil rights movement that followed. 10 years after the boycott, Watkins made his own historic contribution to civil rights as the first African-American student to enroll and later graduate from Vanderbilt University Medical School. Today at Johns Hopkins, his ongoing efforts at minority recruitment have shown positive results. Since joining the hospital in 1979, minority medical student enrollment has grown from less than 1% to over 10%, well above the national average for medical schools. The two lives of Levi Watkins, medicine and civil rights, are inseparable. We saw it clearly when he went home to historic Dexter Avenue Baptist Church with patient and friend Rosa Parks.
Yeah. Real love for a real world is the subject today. Watch these stairs. Yeah.
Love is informed. And my dear friends, love is intelligent. As it moves in the midst of a wolf-like world, Jesus says that love ought to be wise as a serpent.
For the Dexter Fellowship, it's a chance for longtime friends to reconnect with Rosa and Levi, the mother of the movement and a child of the cause. For children now who might be reading about the bus boycott, could you describe for them that day and that moment?
Well, I can remember that we had a very severe, legally enforced racial segregation everywhere, and of course it was very disagreeable on the buses. And at the time I was arrested, I was working with the NAACP as a secretary of the senior branch and as advisor to the youth. And when I was arrested, I just felt very much like I had too much to do to be going to jail, but if I had to face that, I would rather do that than to let the segregators and the powers that be know that we as a people were satisfied with the way we were being treated.
Of course, Dr. Watkins would not have been able to go to Vanderbilt were it not for the civil rights movement.
Well, listen, I'm glad she sat down, because if she hadn't sat down, I wouldn't have been able to stand up. You're right, Vanderbilt was a segregated institution. If Mrs. Parks hadn't sat down, the whole modern civil rights movement might not have occurred. She did it by herself at that time, but the whole movement, Dr. King, this church, and many other things came about as a consequence of that.
What do you remember about that time? You were a young man growing up.
Well, we were small. I was a small child. I had my best friend, Norman Walton. His father was in church today. We were all young at that time. Everything seemed to be, even though it was segregated, it seemed to be the order of the day. The fact that we couldn't go to Oak Park and all those little places seemed to be the order of the day. But when Dr. King and others started the movement, it became clear that the order of the day was out of order. So when I walk into my house every night, the first thing I see is Rosa Parks. And that is a reminder of everything I need to do every day. It is a major part of my life. Sudden death, open heart surgery, full professorship, dean, all of those things at Johns Hopkins, I am sure would not have occurred if the people and the relationships here on the wall had not existed. And that's something I will never, ever forget.
How are you? You look beautiful. You look beautiful.
The day after surgery, Bill Rosberg is doing well. But his surgeon wants one more test.
Now let me tell you what we're going to do before you go home. We need to test it just one more time, so you know what it's about in the event it ever goes off. It won't just shock you.
Yeah, surprise me.
Yeah, under controlled situation, we'll stop your heart one more time. And then let the device start it back up. And this is just a test, and we have to do this because you've got the experimental one. But let me assure you, everything worked well and will work well, and you'll be out of here in a short period of time. I think I'm a better heart surgeon because of Montgomery, a better physician because of the struggle. I think sometimes you have to struggle a little bit to appreciate the struggle in other people's lives.
And memories of the struggle still hit home. When we returned to Montgomery, we found out that Levi had never been back to Oak Park, the whites-only zoo he had to sneak into as a youngster.
All we wanted to do was see the animals. They had great animals and great plants, as they are right now.
It must have been the most beautiful place in the world in your mind, a forbidden zone here.
Yep. You know, that was part of the attraction. It was so pretty, and we couldn't go and visit.
During your life, your young life, was it ever open?
It was never open to me. At the time that they decided to integrate it, I think they closed the park. So I was gone to college by then. I've never been in this park since then.
Really?
So this is the first time I've actually been in the park as an equal citizen.
No kidding. Well, how does it look to you?
Smaller, but still beautiful. This pond is just as pretty. The plants, I don't know what they did with all the animals. Well, you know what? One of the things that concerns me is that there are a lot of other little oak parks in America, and I hope that we can change them as this park has changed. And I think the beauty of America can be brought out for all people if we do that.
Major funding for the New Explorers is provided by Amoco, celebrating the adventure of scientific discovery for the year 2000 and beyond. Additional funding is made possible by Waste Management Incorporated, providing recycling and other waste services around the world. And by Duracell, embracing the power of science education, the source of future technology and innovative growth. Duracell, the copper-top battery.
A video cassette and accompanying teacher's guide are available for each episode of The New Explorers. To order, call 1-800-621-0660 or write The New Explorers, 15181 Route 58 South, Oberlin, Ohio 44074.
This is PBS.